welcome guys to the Macros Bodybuilding and Powerlifting Podcast with me, Pascal Floor, and on the other side, my man, Steve Hall.
Hey guys.
Today, wait, Steve, not so fast. Today, I'm going to interview Steve again about his past 2 weeks, the training, and how the gaining phase is actually going. And Steve, tell us a little bit about those past weeks.
First of all, I want to make sure you realize you called it the wrong thing. It's called a marination phase.
I'm sorry.
You're going to confuse the audience.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, the last time we talked about it, I mentioned it a couple of times. So I'm absolutely sorry that I kind of confused the audience and messed it up here. So shall we redo it or?
It's fine. I am marinating in lots of lovely food and training volume, and I'm going to taste delicious by the end of next week, in which I'm deloading the end of next week.
Seminar is coming up.
Yeah, that's true. I can't believe how soon that seminar is. But, so it's been interesting. Like training the whole time has been really productive. I felt really, really good in every single training session. But that's no different to kind of my cutting. I kind of felt good throughout those as well. I probably have been able to progress training volume more. I've been more assertive with it. So whereas kind of I generally progress through sets, through weeks. So through my cutting, I was maybe adding 1 to 2 sets per muscle group. This time it's been like 2 to 3, 2 to 4. I'm going to basically go balls to the wall next week and see if I can add 2 to 3 sets. So that's been really good on that side, and kind of strength's been going up through the med cycle. It's not like my performance has been dropping off or anything. So I've been managing that really well, which is something you have to be really careful with when you train twice a day, because you can get quite carried away. So that's been really good. Nutrition wise, I've been incrementally increasing calories as we've been going through as well. So started off, I believe, my deload, I was on like just under 3,000 calories, trying to maintain a little bit after the cutting. And then I went to 3.1 to 3.2, 3.3 to 3.2 to 3.3, 3.4, and then 3.3 to 3.400 calories this week. And then next week's going to be 3.400 to 3.500 calories. And then I'll probably drop down to like 3,000 calories during the deload. And then it'll be back to just maintenance, a primer block basically. So actually it's been interesting because as you know, Pascal, I've been discussing about my edema, and it's probably come up a few times during the podcast, and it's a bit all over the place. So I think because of my injury and that my kind of pituitary gland, which controls a lot of these sort of hormones and things like that, and my ability to control my electrolytes and my balance is kind of somewhat impaired. And so whenever there's a big change, and this happens to people generally, but I think the change is more drastically hit in my body. Whenever there's a change in like my carbohydrate intake or in my diet significantly, my body kind of reacts. So I think from what I know is like when I diet and when people diet, generally you chop out processed food, you're eating fewer carbs, but your water intake probably increases if anything, or your fluid intake, because you're trying to keep yourself full with like water. So what you end up doing is you're consuming less processed food, so your sodium intake's lower. Your water intake's higher, so you're flushing out a lot of sodium, and you haven't got lots of carbs that are holding on to that water and sodium within your body. So I think what happens for a lot of people, and what happens obviously for me, is that I'm flushing out all my sodium, and so I hold on to water because the body's like, we need to hold on to this sodium, and then I get edema. Or water retention is like, it's the same sort of thing. That's exactly what it is. Mine's not painful at all. And then when I change to like more carbs, what ends up happening is I have way more processed food. I don't really increase my water intake, so I have lots more sodium without the water kind of getting rid of excess sodium. So then I've just got lots of water retention. So I think that's kind of what the imbalance has been. So I think I need to be particular, and people in general need to be a bit proactive. Like on a refeed day, have more water than usual, because you're having more carbs and you're probably having more sodium. And when you do diet, make sure to put salt on your food, because you're probably going to be washing out a lot and you're not having as much as you normally would, because veggies and stuff, there's no sodium. Well, there probably is, but there's very little compared to like a processed food. And like you're having oats, you're not having bread, which has lots of sodium compared to oats. So I think that's been quite interesting.
And it's also, on that note, really important to mention that sodium helps carbohydrates to actually get stored as glycogen. And if you don't have any sodium, I mean, you don't take really the benefits out of a refeed or a diet break if you don't ingest any sodium whatsoever. And I mean, your body is always trying to get into homeostasis. And if you don't consume any sodium whatsoever, or ingesting too much water, the body will always try to regulate it. And I mean, you pointed out that it is due to your injury, I mean, due to an accident in the past, that your pituitary gland is kind of damaged.
It's what the doctors told me is that it was probably bruised. Now, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't know if that's a medical definition. I don't know. It sounded like a bit wishy-washy to me. But because the pituitary gland is very much like hormone control, and I had trouble with my sodium balance and also my testosterone. And so both of those have now basically recovered, and I'm not monitored. But I think I still have low testosterone. Not that I've been tested for a long time, but I think it's on the low side. And I do have even when I'm in a mass gaining phase, I sometimes suffer from edema, and I'm like, why? But people generally will suffer from it if you go out for like a curry, maybe, even if you hit your macros, even if you drink lots, you're probably having shed loads more sodium than usual. So then you probably do wake up with some water retention from that. So people probably can relate to it. I just think my body isn't as good at adjusting to it. Or maybe I'm just not, like, my thirst and those sort of recognitions aren't as kind of obvious, because I know a lot of this is very related to like peaking for a bodybuilding show, and like you talked about, and a lot of, I know 3DMJ are kind of like along the lines of, we don't manipulate water too much or sodium, kind of keep those level, and then just use carbs to change things, because the carbs with them have sodium, so you kind of end up doing that. You end up drinking more anyway, so it's kind of like the carbs, as long as you are drinking kind of to thirst, you keep that controlled, kind of, you can end up just manipulating carbs, and you kind of get away with the other two doing what you wanted them to anyway.
And I mean, a peak week is kind of an art. There's not really much science in that field, and everyone responds differently. And to me, I'm always wondering why people then make some experiments when they never actually tried something before, because you can always use your contest prep to see how your body reacts, and try some experiments in the peak week itself. It's just, I don't know, you can mess up a lot with it. I've never seen actually someone win a show because of a peak week, but I definitely seen some people lose it because of the peak week. So it can make a difference, but not to that extent that you will go from last place to first place. But the other way around holds true. And I mean, it really doesn't make sense then to actually try to manipulate your sodium intake or your water intake if you've never actually tried it before. And you will always need to do some experiments along the way on the contest prep itself, see how your body reacts to refeeds, how much carbohydrates, when you're spilled over or not. And this is the time before the peak week actually to try those things out. Now, I wanted to get back to the pituitary gland. Just 1 second. Have you ever experienced some kind of sleep deprivation or sleep disturbance? Because I know that the pituitary gland also regulates melatonin.
Not that I'm aware of. It's funny you bring this up though. Not that I think it's completely related, but it has made me remember, and I think it's kind of interesting for the audience. Yeah, I don't think I have had that, but I have recently, the last I think 2 times in the last like 3 or 4 days, Charlotte's had to wake me up because I'm talking and like, but it's not just talking. It's like I can't remember. I can't remember exactly what the scenario was, but it was something like I had a bag and I was running to get like my suitcase, and this ship that was in the ocean that I needed to get on was taking off, and I remember chasing after it, and I felt like I couldn't get there, and I was shouting like, "No, come back, come back." And Charlotte had to wake me up because I was like distressed. And this is the second time, and it was the same sort of like distressed calling out, like go away, like, and I felt like I was helpless. And then I woke up, and like I wake up in a panic. Like I was going to Google this because I want to find out what, like, there must be either I'm stressed or something's going on in my life that's causing this to happen. It's strange. I don't think it's related to the pituitary gland, but I wanted to bring that up because I think I'd forget.
No, it could have been that this whole edema thing also has an influence. When you're mentioning that the pituitary gland is bruised or something, that it also shows some symptoms in different areas in your life, such as, for example, the sleep, because melatonin is regulated by the pituitary gland as well. But yeah, that was just an idea, and I just wanted to hear if there's anything related to that in terms of your sleep as well.
No, from the head injury, the only things I ever have suffered is the poor sodium control. Well, I had low sodium levels. I had hypoandronemia, something like that. Basically, I was waterlogged. I was like a camel holding on to all the water, and then the low testosterone, but also it short.
Your camelbacks are on your glutes, right?
Yeah. More short term, I lost taste and smell. I think my taste is fully recovered, and it has been for ages. I don't think my smell's still not fully recovered. So I don't know if I've ever said it to you actually, Pascal.
No.
But there's it's like a certain type of fart I can't smell. When I first came out of hospital, like for months, I couldn't smell any farts. I couldn't smell any gas.
That's not too bad, actually, in the realms of fitness enthusiasts, especially in the gym.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'm there. I'm always training in the morning. There aren't that many people around, and sometimes you're just walking by a rack or something, and there's this really disgusting, like acidy smell in the air, and you're just like, ooh, yeah, maybe it isn't that bad to not being able to smell those kind of farts.
There's much worse things. But yeah, I can remember vividly being in hospital, and this isn't actually that funny, but it was Easter time, so I got brought in lots of chocolate. And I remember eating some, and I was like, this doesn't taste good. And I didn't eat any chocolate. Nothing tasted good. It's really weird. Like, the brain is amazing. Head injuries, avoid them at all costs. Trust me.
Unless you want to avoid smelling farts.
Yeah. I did want to bring up a point, because I think the audience will find this interesting. And I think it reiterates what we've been talking about, is why the scale isn't always the best thing to measure progress by. So I started my prep at about 100, my first week average was 175. A month later, I basically dropped, an actual month later after my deload, I was 176 pounds. So that was after a deload, so I'd actually started eating more. But the week after that, 173. And then I ended my prep, or the dieting phase, at 172 pounds, just under. So then first week of deload, it spiked again, 173.5. And now, third week into kind of marination, and I'm at 173 pounds again. So you think over the course... It is
so weird.
Like, over that course of time, which has been like almost 3 months, my nutrition has changed drastically. Like, my energy expenditure has been all over the place. Like, I've been dieting, like, but my actual weight has changed somewhat, not significantly in the slightest. I thought it was interesting because I certainly, like, my intake's gone from dieting at 2,300 calories and now like over 3,000. there's no way that I'm not in at least a small surplus. Like there is no way. But if you were just to look at the scale, you might be like, it would confuse you to what's actually going on. So I think it's important to realize
have you made any adjustments due to that?
Due to it not aggressive, like not really going up much.
Yeah, I mean, like you would expect some kind of changes going on. Of course, you know that the stress of the diet is coming down, which then releases some water, which you hold on because of cortisol. But then again, on the other hand, you're raising your carb intake, you are getting more food into your digestive system and all that kind of stuff. So you would expect at least a balanced weight or even going above. Also, probably because of you're training heavier, you could potentially have some DOMs, which also then directs some water into the muscles for regeneration purposes. And if you don't see the scale then going up, especially after a couple of weeks, did you want to change something, or was it like, okay, I'm trusting the process, or did you actually change something?
So I'd always planned to go just under. I've stuck to the plan exactly. I haven't done anything different to the plan. So it's really interesting you bring that up, because there is so much going on, and it just goes to show how this week basically my weight had been creeping up, just over 173 pounds. And then bang, 172 pounds yesterday, bang, under 172 pounds today, which is basically almost today, I'm basically the lowest I've ever been in prep. It's like back to my prep low. Yet for the past month, I've been eating over 3,000 calories basically on average, which is crazy. And it just goes to show how much water can affect things. And like you talked about, for me, typically, when we look at my data, I go through dieting, go for a deload, and in that deload time, if people aren't aware, I raise calories to pretty much maintenance, and my weight spikes. But next week it drops down to normally a new low. So obviously there's kind of some sort of compensatory water effect going on there, and we can kind of see that. So like you said, like my deload week was actually heavier than any of these weeks have been, because it's probably, that deload, lots of stress was like accumulating. My body was getting used to the more carbs, more sodium, or whatever. And then it's kind of dropped the first week, and potentially even like the second week I could have dropped water, yet I was actually gaining other tissue, but the water was what's been changing. So I think because it is such a short period of time, I think I had to have quite a strict plan, because I couldn't go off what was going on, because there's not enough data. So like I always say to like clients or people, basically, if you ever change anything with your diet, you have to give it at least a week or two to actually know what's gone on, because there's so like different people deal with sodium differently.
Especially when gaining, I think people make too quick and rash decisions when they are gaining, especially
people chuck 500 calories, they take them away.
Totally. And I mean, when you're gaining, there will be way more fluctuations than when you are dieting, actually. And even when dieting, the fluctuations can be severe. I mean, my last week was insane in terms of how high my weigh-ins have been. Also because I had some really productive training weeks. I was able to push it real hard. This, of course, caused some more stress in my system, even though I didn't really feel like it. Caused some DOMs. I perhaps ate a little bit more, or my digestive system didn't work as properly as the week prior to that, and I weighed simply 2 kilos more as an average. Yeah, and there was no way I could have. Yeah, and there was no way I could have gone or could have get that fat or anything, because we decreased my macronutrient intake this week. And I mean, it goes to show that people should more trust the process, and you will always first see if anything really were successful or not in hindsight.
And you don't know what worked and what didn't. Even is hindsight
Totally.
bias.
Totally. Also, when it comes to your training and maybe switching something up in your training, if this particular exercise really was the cause for you making progress or not, this will only or first show in a couple of weeks. Because when you're doing the work now, your body takes the time to accumulate, to make the adaptations and all that kind of stuff, and this just takes time. This is also the reason why program hopping or making adjustments on a weekly basis, like those severe adjustments, are really not necessary and even more counterproductive than it actually is beneficial in the end.
I imagine it's interesting you brought that up, kind of the delayed training effect. You don't really see the result of what your work has been until after, which is kind of similar to, like, I've been dieting, have a deload, and then I see the weight loss come off. I think, and I predict potentially during the time that I deload this time and then go into maintenance, I bet my weight could creep up even, and it will be a complete mind screw up because I'll have reduced calories, but I could see that potentially my weight will creep up because I'm kind of gaining the weight or it's the weight I gained is kind of presenting itself in this maintenance period. So I bet like I could easily see that happening, and it will be a real, like, again, like you said, it's why it's important to not just trust the process, but also have a plan, because you can't trust a process unless you have a plan in place.
Totally. Besides you being a mess in terms of your edema,
my calves look so much bigger today.
Proud. My calves look always big. Kind of. Come on. I mean, I don't want to get too much credit for my calves, but they are genetically good. But I would actually, if I could change it, I would rather have a huge, massive back and chest than good genetics in your calves. Yeah. Look at those arms, man. God damn. What I actually wanted to talk about is that we've now seen, and it was the proof that you are a wreck as well, such as I am. And I know that not only your edema was going on, but also that you have been dealing with some kind of injury in your knees. Can you tell us a little bit about it? What happened? What did you do?
Yeah.
Or the adjustments you've made and all that kind of stuff?
So I didn't change anything with my leg training, like my knee flexion stuff particularly. I kept my same squat. I kept a high bar, close stance, feet forward squat, and that was fine on my first training session. But in that first training session, I actually changed my secondary movement from walking lunges to a hack squat. And I think it was into like my second set. Actually, I only had 2 sets of hack squats because it was the first week of my mesocycle, new movement. And so on that second set, but I was having drop sets after this because I've added in some kind of pump work in this mesocycle, as people will know. In that second set, I was getting an aggravation of the knee, kind of like not muscular. It was more like tendons, and it feels like something's being strained when I get into that deep knee flexion position. And in that session, I kind of pushed through it a little bit, not crazy. Like I didn't go just like, fuck it, it completely hurts, but I'm just going to go completely through it, outwork. I probably pushed a bit too hard, and when I felt the niggle, I should have backed off. And
pain is just sweetness leaving the body, right?
Yeah, totally bad way to go about things. But yeah, so it was just kind of a strain, and then the next day it hurt, and I think it's a similar strain that I've kind of had before, and I don't know what it is exactly. I don't know whether it's I wouldn't put it down to excessive volume because it was the first week of my mesocycle. It felt fine during my other mesocycle, and I just deloaded. So I think, and after talking to Quinn Hennock a little bit, I can kind of talk to him via email because I've consulted with him before. And he's going to come on the podcast, actually, which is exciting. We're organising that.
Oh, yeah.
So we basically put it down to the hack squat being a no-go, or at least the way the way I described it, because you can either kind of face it front on or face it with your back against it, and it was the facing it front on that's what caused it. And so ever since that, I then kind of hoped that if I rested it, it would be okay. But going into my second lower body session, which is very much glute and hamstring dominant, it was kind of hurting a little bit during my straight leg deadlifts. And then I went into, I'm doing snatch grip deficit deadlifts, and I just couldn't get into the lower position. It was, as soon as I got into that position, my knee was just snagging. Like, I don't know if you know what that word even means, but it kind of felt like it was like, you could just feel it going. And so I ended up changing that movement for something similar. So a snatch grip deficit deadlift is very glute dominant. It does hit the quads a bit, doesn't really get the hamstrings too much, and obviously it gets the upper back a ton. So I just changed it to what I knew would be fine, a walking lunge, which is again quite quad glute, and you don't really get that much upper back, but it was absolutely fine to just make that slight adjustment on the fly. And then on that weekend, I was hoping I could squat. I just turned my feet out slightly rather than having them front facing, and it felt like there was no pain. But after a couple of sets, and if I knew myself rightly, I should have just rested it, and I wish I did, because it ended up hurting in like my final set. Definitely, like, just, it's like one of those things, and actually Quinn called it like poking the bear. It's like an angry bear. If it's angry, don't poke it and piss it off. Like, you might not be slapping it in the face, but even a poke's going to piss it off. It's like that with my knee. Even a little poke was like enough to flare it up and it get angry. And he's also used this analogy before in that, like, to tune a car, you can't tune a car when it's hot and the engine's hot. You need to let that cool down. So when you've got an injury, don't do anything that aggravates it. Don't poke it. Don't like make it hot. A huge recommendation from myself, because whenever I do that, it always flares up and makes it worse. So then going into this next week, I basically just subbed out my quad movements for leg press, because I found there was the leg press I've been using just didn't cause any pain, and I could smash my quads with it, and I just got tons of volume through it. So that's what I've ended up doing, is using the leg press, just substituting movements that were pain free, getting the same amount of volume, if not more. And that's the way I've been going about progressing things. So I think that's, like, for people to take away lessons from that, it is, you can still get a training effect. My quads aren't damaged. Well, they are today. They've got some definite muscle soreness, but they're not like damaged. I can still get a training effect. I can still cause growth in them. It's like old injured people. Like, they can still they can still train their muscles. They just have to find movements that allow them to do it pain free. And I think in the short term, you can definitely do that. So yeah, that's kind of what's happened, and I'm really glad. And I think you're the same, and we've kind of talked about this, in that I think we've both matured as lifters in the last few years, especially kind of like in the last couple of years. I definitely feel like I've matured massively as a lifter, just like knowing my body, knowing what it can do, knowing that it's not the end of the world to like miss a session or not do squats or like find an alternative. Yeah, I think that's been really quite interesting, and I'm actually, in a weird way, it's quite nice that it's happened now, because at least I'm gaining and I'm in a surplus, and then I'm going to go through maintenance. Hopefully all my niggles are going to clear up, and then I can dig through prep and know not to do hack squats, because they're a fuck up.
Yeah, and I mean, now you have the surplus and the nutrition available to actually heal up properly.
Yeah.
Or to make the whole process a little bit more efficient. But I absolutely agree with everything you said there, especially with kind of growing as a lifter and becoming more mature when it comes to making decisions as well. In the past, I was training purely for powerlifting, and I told you that at the time I transitioned to bodybuilding. Since then, I was dealing with maybe 1 or 2 niggles or pain. Compared to my time as a powerlifter, I always was struggling with something. Yeah, when it was something in my shoulder, for example, or if that felt all right, I had something in my knee or in my hips or anything like that, because it was simply when you're pushing your body that hard, and especially when you're working in those higher intensity levels, and then not really listening to your body, and perhaps even having some form or technique breakdowns when you're or while you're lifting, this will simply stress your body really much and leave you wrecked in the end. And I mean, looking back in hindsight, it is really no surprise that I've been always injured in the past. And I now, due to my hip surgery in December, this was kind of the moment where I realized or where I changed my behavior in the gym and as a lifter in general, because I really it was a point where something drastic was going on, something really severe, and I wanted to hit the gym, and I did train after my surgery anyway. So the day after my release of the hospital, I was back at the gym, smashing my upper body.
Such a bro.
And such a bro. Only the upper body.
Disco pumper.
The disco pumper. Oh yeah. And but my mentality simply changed since then. I'm really making sure that my form and technique is on point. And what I'm way more concentrated on now is to actually build up that mind-muscle connection and rather take a little bit less weight, but make the exercise way more efficient when it comes to building the muscle. And this is the same actually when it comes to the power lifts, because all you want to do is actually be efficient in the power lifts itself. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to train balls to the wall all the time, putting as much weight on the bar as possible, have some RPE numbers of 9 or 10 each giving session, because this will just wreck your body in the long run. Maybe you won't feel like it from your central nervous system, but your joints and tendons will also suffer. And I mean, along going off tangent here, and I'm absolutely agreeing with you that the longer you're in the game, the more good decisions you're doing when it comes to your training, so that you actually can stay in that game for the long run. And to me, it sounds like your knees and your joints, and especially, were just kind of aggravated from all the heavy compound lifting, because there's always a crossover effect going on as well when you're doing your snatch grip deadlift. It isn't really that there's a high knee flexion going on, but still it puts a lot of pressure on it. And when you're always doing those heavy compound movements, I can see the potential that, of course, at some point something will break then. And I mean, we also need to be realistic that this is a sport where injuries simply happen, and especially the heavier or the more strength you build, the more likely it is that you will build up some injuries. But that doesn't mean that you can't train. There are always ways to train around an injury, but you need to really be smart about it. And how are you moving on from now on?
So yeah, I was actually going to bring that up and be like, the reason I'm like glad it's happened now, and I'm not glad it's happened. Don't get me wrong, I'm not glad that I got like this pain, but the lesson I've taken away from it is this great realization that, okay, it's not the end of the world that I can't squat. I love squatting, but it's not the end of the world. I can still get a training effect. And because I'm just so glad, because the first week I was silly, I squatted again and I caused it to flare up, and that caused me issues down the line. But because I then have rested it, I actually was able to get back to snatch grip deadlifts, no pain. They felt awesome. And all my lower body movements, because I was before, even like leg curls, when I got into the fully kind of the fully flexed position, like when your legs are at your ass, I could feel it snagging again. Whereas now, nothing. So everything is absolutely fine. I just can't do like deep knee flexion, kind of in that kind of deep squat position. That's where the pain comes. Well, not with any load. So actually, just this session gone this weekend, which I actually really enjoyed myself. Did 9 sets of leg press. So loads, and then went into high bar, lightweight back squats, and I got deep, and I let my feet flare out, found a position that was pain-free, and just like did them slow, controlled, and absolutely wrecked my quads. And then did some leg extensions. And today, like, my quads are sore. It felt great. And to have gone through that and like experienced the fact that I have been a mature lifter and what I did paid off, it's just a nice, like, it's a nice feeling. I guess it's similar to people being like, okay, I'm not losing weight right now, but everything's telling me I should be. I'm actually going to, rather than react and kind of pull calories away and increase cardio, I'm just going to stay the course, and then the weight comes off. And I've had this with clients before where they're kind of worried they're not losing weight, and then I'm like, you're going to lose it, trust me, when we check in next week you'll have a new low. And then they do, and they're like, oh, this is why I have a coach. And sometimes this is why having a coach really helps, because we can make sure they still get a training effect. We can kind of save them from themselves in a sense. And I think you have to be really mature, or at least be quite kind of clued up to be able to do that, to be able to save yourself from yourself. And I'm glad that for me, it's shown myself that I have matured as a lifter. Whereas in the past, I know that there's no way I would have done that.
And I know that you wanted to go hard in your marination phase to really push up the volume and intensity to get the most out of it. And then when an injury arises or occurs, it can be quite annoying to some extent. I mean, you had this plan of going balls to the wall, getting the most out of your marination phase, and then there simply comes this annoying little thing which then would potentially throw off the whole plan. But you kept going, you tried some stuff, you gave it some time to first and foremost rest or heal up a little bit, and then you got into the gym and worked your way back up with kind of a different exercise which doesn't aggravate the injury, which is also important to note. I think that there are always ways working around an injury, except when you have a lower back injury, I think.
Yeah.
Because I mean,
not much you can do.
No, but other than that, there will probably always be a way around training, around an injury. But you really need to be aware of it and listen to your body. I think this is the most important thing, and this will first come with experience as well. Because in the past, I was always like, okay, I know how to listen to my body, but now looking back, I really didn't know anything at all. It was simply I was kind of ignoring my body. That's about it, and not that I was able to listen to it, the signals and all that kind of stuff. And this is something I think that will only come with experience, and also dealing with such kind of stuff. And I think it was the right move for you to actually give it some time. And now, you are still making progress, and you are still taking the benefits from the marination phase, and don't just simply go like, okay, fuck it, I need to make use of this, and I will continue squatting anyway, because otherwise I won't make any gains. Because that's simply not the case. You will make gains with other movements as well, as long as volume is kind of matched. You can still get the same amount of gains as well.
Mm-hmm. I think you touched on so many things there that I want to bring up, actually. First of all, I want to bring up, we found the title for the podcast, Listen to Your Body, because the edema sort of situation was listening to my body, and so is the injury. So we've got the title, which is great.
Yes.
And I also wanted to bring up, what do I want to bring up? I wanted to bring up the fact I actually started this bodybuilding prep because I was going to not compete this year, and I was going to do a powerlifting instead early in the year.
For real?
Yeah, because I had hit a hip and knee injury, I was like, I can't do powerlifting because it was impacting low bar squatting massively. I just couldn't. So I needed to rest that, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do bodybuilding, and that's why I ended up doing bodybuilding instead of powerlifting this year. And that's part of the reason I love bodybuilding, because of that. And then finally, I did want to bring up, you brought up a good point in the training volume is somewhat matched. I just wanted to talk about how I personally like to define training volume, because there are so many ways. Like there's sets times reps times load, there's like just sets, and then there's sets times reps. And I find it's actually just the easiest and most simple to define number of sets within a rep range. So if you're training for like strength, the number of like heavy sets, so like sets of like 3 to 6 maybe, and then number of sets for hypertrophy is like number of sets within like 6 to 15. That's probably easier, because it just gets very complicated when, especially for bodybuilding, when there's so many different exercises. Like if I was doing sets times reps times load, like the exercises you pick would always be the ones like a leg press. You can do shit loads of weight on there, and you can do loads of reps. So yeah, it comes a bit complicated. So I did want to bring that up, but so when I'm talking about sets, basically number of hard sets in the hypertrophy rep range.
And I mean, when people are always talking about volume and doing that amount of volume for a muscle part or something, we always need to consider the exercise, because doing all the volume with heavy deadlifts, it is possible, but it will beat up your body and your CNS to quite an amount. Whereas, as you already pointed out, you can do way more work when it comes to leg press, for example, with probably even more volume in general or in total, and recover just fine from it, because it simply doesn't tax the whole system as much. So yeah, I mean, when you're coming up with some calculations, or just look at your spreadsheet, count everything together, it doesn't really give you all the information you need.
People get so confused.
Totally. And it's not simply about volume on the paper, but also when looking at the exercise, because I could do bicep curls every single day and recover just fine, and at the end of the week I would have some silly numbers, which when I would do it with my squats, for example, I would just be fried then.
Yeah, it's just so dynamic. Like this is what I often get people asking me, because obviously we're associated with Mike Israetel, and people ask me like, and I've written articles on MRV, and people are asking me, what's your MRV, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, well, to be honest, because I vary exercises, I vary rep ranges, I vary intensities, I like vary nutritional protocols, my sleep's varied, life's varied. There's never a set number. It's like a range. And again, This comes back to our podcast title, Listen to Your Body. This is the most important thing. You talked about it in your article on fatigue markers. And it's kind of like, you need to listen to these things that are going on so that we can find the appropriate volume for you. And this is exactly what we do for our clients. We auto-regulate their volume or their intensity, their training, so that we find that like sweet spot for them, so that it keeps them progressing at the right rate. And people need to listen to their own bodies to be able to do that for themselves.
Totally. I think we've covered it, right?
Yeah, I think we have. I think it's been a wrap.
Nice, eh?
Anything else we need to plug? This is our chance.
Yeah, first and foremost, I would like to say thanks for all the listeners out there. It is really awesome, all the support, the feedback, and it would be also awesome if you guys leave a comment below when you're listening over at iTunes. Give us a rating there. When you're watching this over at YouTube, just leave a comment and a thumbs up. It would help us massively to spread the word, actually. And additionally to that, in 2 weeks' time, the Mike Israetel seminar is about to happen, which is insane. Do you want to say anything, Steve?
I need to get my slides and my presentation done. I'm talking about adipose phobia and kind of the fear of fat gain that comes along with bulking, and how to take clients through that process and also take yourself through that process. So I've got kind of the backbone of my structure of my lecture, of my speech. I don't know. And it's going to be really enjoyable to talk about it, and I'm going to try and make it quite interactive with the audience, because I think a lot of people there will have gone through it. I might have to bring Pascal up on stage and like take him. No, I don't. So yeah, that's going to look good. I'm super excited for that. That's going to be really, really good.
It's going to be such a great weekend, and I'm really looking forward for all the attendees. And on that note, we have still 7 tickets left to be sold. Only 7, actually. So if you're interested in participating at the seminar, I wouldn't wait for too long, because those 7 tickets can be gone quite quickly. So yeah, but get on that.
I think the only other thing that we have that's new is we have merchandise. So we have some t-shirts with the new logo and some hoodies. So they should be coming next week. So we'll probably be kind of plugging those. And if you're interested, you can kind of, probably best bet is actually just send me an email at steve@revivestronger.com. I can sort you out, make sure we've got your size and everything. Or you can probably, because we have just purchased them, we've probably got plenty of stock, you can probably buy them through the website. And we will be able to give you one there. If we didn't perchance have your size, we just plug you a refund. We're not worried about that at all. That's really exciting, because I cannot wear, I mean, apart from, I would love some vests, because I love vests. But it's hard to find good ones. But yeah, I'm excited to have the hoodies and the t-shirts, get some people repping the brand. It'll be really exciting. We want kind of everyone to revive stronger, everyone to be part of the team. So no, it's really exciting stuff. And again, like you said, I do want to thank the audience for listening and for just the ongoing support for Revive. Like, I couldn't be where I am today. We couldn't be where we are right now without people online supporting us, supporting what we're doing. And any feedback for anything that we do is massively appreciated. And any questions you've got, shoot them below. We can all, because I mean, it's a great platform for us to cover them, is in these conversations. So yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.